I'm going to start that over. Hello again. So, welcome everybody to the Women's Empower Network. I'm so excited to have Ashleigh with us today. We're actually in the same state, but in different areas. So, welcome, Ashleigh.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, thank you. I know you're just my second interview this year now. I'm just getting warmed back up and
Well,
excited to share all of you with the group. So, if you would, so we could get to know you better, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about, who you are and your story and journey that led you to what you're passionate about today.
yeah, that's a big question.
I,
And so
highlights.
let me take this and bring it into a distillation.
Yep.
Uh, um, what led me doing what I do today, which is supporting women, number one, in healing their relationship with their mother.
Nice.
And it's also supporting them to do probably in my opinion, the best thing they could ever do for themselves is take radical responsibility and radical self-care for themselves, making themselves number one in their world. And that's not selfish. It's what I call being self-full,
Right.
right? Because as many of us know, when you're resourced, you then can actually then truly give and you don't get drained from your giving. So the way I came into this was, yes, you could say, the whole lifetime, right? And I can see that. And most significantly, it was because I ended up taking care of my mother for the last years of her life. And she was 86 when she came into my care. None of us saw it coming. And because of certain events that happened in my family, I was devoted to her having her last breath with me in our home. I wasn't
Oh, wow.
putting her anywhere. And I thought she was going to live a year. And she got healthier, happier, and more stable, living with me in Boulder. And so I was still totally devoted to her. And in the third year, I walked out to these tall evergreen trees in our yard because I was, I had good self-care. And there still was this like tired in my being, which I couldn't deny. And so by year three, I was like, okay, I need something to hold on to, right? Like the lighthouse, right? Because my commitment also to her was to treat her with kindness, compassion, respect, and patience. And that wasn't always easy,
No.
right? And so sometimes if I couldn't, I would keep my mouth shut. I would walk away. I wouldn't make a decision until like I was again, right?
But
So
it
I walked
sounds like that takes a lot of energy to hold your tongue.
sometimes, but that was my choice because I knew at the end of the day, she's going to pass and I'm going to have to live with my heart and soul.
Right.
And so that's what helped me stay quiet, walk away, go get a massage, go take a walk, go to the hot springs. Those are all my go-tos. Go laugh with some friends. So I needed this uh something, right? Like what's going to help me get through it because she's still here.
I know what you mean. And I know you don't mean that in a malicious way at all. But and that's probably part of it is you're thinking a year and here you are now in year three going, oh my God, what did I sign up for?
Yeah. And I actually used to go to her a few times and go, tell me, it's just the two of us. Because she'd been through a lot in her lifetime. I said, it's just the two of us. You're bionic, right? You're not you're not going anywhere. And we'd laugh about it. But anyway, I went out to the trees tall evergreen trees. And I asked the trees, like, why am I so devoted to this woman? Right? Because it felt like it was just bigger than like a daughter taking care of her mom. And, and it felt bigger than the fact that this woman, it's like she's been through a lot in her life. Right. So I had compassion, for that. So I went out to the trees and I asked the trees, and I heard, it's your part in healing the feminine. And I just went, oh my God. And the truth of that statement just was so powerful. And it was the thing that helped me get through another year, because we were 4 years together.
So
And
you intuitively knew what that meant because I can imagine somebody else hearing that can mean a lot of different things.
yeah, yeah. So good noticing. So after mom passed, and she passed peacefully and quietly with me at her side in our home the way we wanted, and I was recovering, starting to feel creative again. So that was a good sign for me, right? Like, oh, okay. And I had been performing a one-woman show, which was a show, my true stories of personal healing and transformation that I thought were personal. And I had been sharing them with friends over tea for decades. And one day I just heard, like, take your stories, go bigger. And so I knew what that meant. So I did a show, and it was so well received. I kept taking myself to a different edge, and was eventually like having audiences that I didn't know who was going to be in the audience, and selling tickets, and I didn't have any theater background. Like, this just was like innate gifts that were just kind of blossoming when I was like 54 years old.
That's awesome,
Right? Who knew?
right?
It's never ending. And so I thought, oh, I should like write another show. I want to create another show, right? It had been several years. And I thought, oh, yeah, the mother show. Oh my God. And it just like was very clear. And then in that process, I was asking myself, like, why has these 4 years been so impactful? Because they were. Like, I'd been on my healing spiritual journey for 30 years when she came into my care. But the depth of healing that occurred for me, and then for what I watched for her, and then between the two of us, was kind of off the charts. And
Wow.
so I was like genuinely asking, like, why has this been so impactful? Right? Because it affected everything in my being. And then what came to me is because she's our first relationship, our first relationship of love as humans, and therefore our first experience of perceived like separation, rejection, right? Abandonment. So why not use that as a lens for healing, right?
Right.
And my litmus test that I ask people about is, because a lot of people, are like, oh, like several things. Oh, no, I'm fine. Don't need to go there and open up that door, because it's never ending. And I get that. And that's not true, actually. And a lot of women also feel like, well, I have to do it with my mom and she's not willing. And that's not true also, because at 25, when I started, like when I went to my first therapist, I thought, oh, well, for various reasons, my mom doesn't have the capacity. And I'm tenacious. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I don't want her limits limiting me,
Right.
her lack of capacity or lack of willingness, whatever. And I learned and discovered and experienced it doesn't limit you, because your relationship with your mother is in you, right? And it's really empowering. That's why the radical responsibility like eventually arose in my work, because it's like, number one, when you put yourself first, it's so empowering, and putting yourself first with your healing, because you're in charge. You don't have to wait and connect and count on someone else's capacity to do that healing work with you. So, yeah, after coming through that and having those realizations, like I also felt like I didn't go through all of what I did go through with my mother just for my personal growth. Like it's that there's so many messages and like teachings within the story that I share so I started, like, I put this show together and I started doing it just in front of friends and was getting feedback and just seeing the really the profound impact. And so I'm working on actually putting the show on YouTube so that many, 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 many hearts can experience it. And I've also been doing it live for the last couple of years. And so the deeper work, the one-on-one work and other offers that I have is to, yes, heal this relationship so that when you think of your mom, loving kindness.
Right.
And, it's not just for mom, it's really any relationship, right? But that's such a pivotal one. Like, why not use that one?
Well, and that one impacts your whole outlook on life, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what I also discovered in the journey with my mother, that I wanted to treat her with kindness, compassion, respect, and patience, no matter what she was throwing at me. I was choosing kindness, compassion, respect, and patience. And what I realized after she passed and in my recovery and all that, that was also, like, I call it the elixir I was giving her. It was also the elixir for me because I was kinder, more compassionate, more respectful, more patient with myself. And then the key is when you are that with yourself, then you're naturally that everywhere else. So it's like a win-win-win. It's a trifecta.
Or in this case, four Trector.
Yeah.
Trecta. I love that. So what are the four again?
Kindness, compassion, respect, and patience.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so that's bringing it back full circle when you were talking about self-care
Yeah.
and applying those four aspects to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, it was in the journey with my mother that I also started being like gentler with myself. And that's a game changer. Just that being like gentler, which also means kinder with yourself. And I couldn't do this while I was in it with my mom. But I did this after, which was like looking at my journey and like acknowledging, like, girl, you have been on a ride here, right? I couldn't
Right.
do it in it because in it, I just was getting through,
Right.
like, just literally like in the moment, what's needed next. Some days were completely like that. And so I couldn't think of everything because it would have overwhelmed me and just had me on in bed.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But when I had some spaciousness from it, I could look back and then have more compassion for myself of everything. Not feeling sorry, not, oh, woe is me in the pity party. I don't go there.
Right.
But it's to have compassion. Like, it's just a game changer. And so, yeah,
What
that's what I
comes
want
to
to share.
mind when you're sharing that? It's so touching. and I was thinking about when you first said about taking radical responsibility,
Yeah.
is that you have the full capacity to respond rather than react to the other person.
Yeah,
But I think
exactly.
that takes practice. I mean, in my own healing with my own mother, um,
Hmm.
and I was grateful I was able to do it as well before she passed, is I
Oh,
could be in her presence as me standing in my center and not reacting to her shenanigans and just
yeah,
observing her shenanigans and seeing her as this separate individual person with her history, her trauma, her stories, and being present for it. It didn't mean like it'd wear me thin if I was with her for too long,
yeah. Hmm.
but it was a completely different experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because one of the things I so love that you brought that up, because one of the keys I share with people is to find out who your mother is, who she was as a little girl, who she was as a young woman, what were her aspirations, like before she met your dad, right? Ask relatives and then see your mom with those eyes to her. That that's a game changer too. Like
Yeah,
all of these are really, honestly, I think every step I have is like really powerful, like can really shift. Because then also, like what you were doing with your mom of just seeing her as her own woman, not necessarily mom,
right,
right? Seeing her as her own woman with her own struggles, yeah, and just observing. Because by you holding that kind of space and observing, one just allows her, it doesn't go anywhere, her the shenanigans, I love the word. My mother had shenanigans. And it just allows them so they feel this like layer of acceptance, but also especially with the shenanigans, that energy, those the game playing and all of that, that energy goes back to them,
right,
and they start seeing, oh, I can't do that. Look at it's not having, in their minds, it's not having the impact it ordinarily does. And sometimes that's an unconscious thought, but it's certainly in there,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And that shifts. They're like, oh, I can't get away with that anymore. Okay. So, yeah, it's, and I call it sacred work, taking care of your parents. Because there you go. In in other cultures, the elders live with you, and even the little kids take care of the elders, right? It's beautiful. My nephew was lived with us for a little while, and I loved it, appreciated seeing their connection. It's just this culture that it's like we, send them off.
right. Yeah,
Um, so it's really beautiful. And then, another thing that I literally witnessed in the 4 years is the healing that happened. Like it was that, how they say, um, when you heal, it goes back 7 generations or 12 generations and forward. Well, I was witnessing that in our home because I watched our nervous systems co-regulate together. It was
that is beautiful.
fascinating.
It is, and it's such important work, and I'm glad you brought it up. Because like you said, it's our origin relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I have met people now that had really great relationships with their mothers, but it
Yeah.
sounds like the majority did not. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but
And
the healing and the inner work, I mean, you and I are witness. It's so worth it
oh my gosh.
just to
And
come into your own completely.
mm-hmm. Because also for women, she's our first modeling of
Right.
what it means to be a woman. So that's big. Like there's so many layers to women, you know, in any relationship. So many layers. And it's interesting. A young friend of mine asked me, she said, Ashley, why is the mother-daughter relationship like so fraught? She goes, I can't think of one friend that just doesn't have a challenge with their mom. And I sat there for a moment because I was like, huh, I never thought about it at that point.
Right.
And I'm just kind of waiting. I'm like, why? Why? What? And then this wisdom dropped in, which was because they have fear for us, especially in this culture, many cultures, right? They've already walked this path of what it means to be a woman in this culture, and they have fear for us. And most of them didn't know how to talk about it.
Or
So,
there wasn't a place to talk about it.
right, exactly. And so it could just come out sideways in so many funky ways, right?
Yes.
And so it was really from a place of love, but they didn't have the tools and the resources that we have now. And so I say often, I'm like, you know what, I feel like it's our generation and the ones behind us that we came in to heal this relationship. They don't count on them, don't put it on them. They didn't come in with the capacity, they didn't come up with the resources or the languaging or the space to even think about it,
Right.
right?
Yeah. But when I think about some of the stories my mother told me and the trauma, you know, it helped me have a lot more compassion, but it
Mhm.
also helped me appreciate the generation that I was born into. Even though it had its own challenges, it was still much better than the generation that she had experienced.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and if you want to heal, then take responsibility and do it.
Well, and what I love about this conversation is I'm hoping that the younger women in the group are hearing this. So you don't wait until your 50s
Yeah.
to start doing the work, that you can do the work now on your own with or without your mother.
Yes.
Um, this has been so beautiful. So, what events do you have coming up, or how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, and it's themothermonologues.com.
Oh, nice.
And my show will be going up on YouTube next couple of months, so you can, put in your contact info and you'll get informed when the show goes live there. Um, And then on the website, you can see the work that I do. I do one-on-one deep dives with women. And then I'll also have these activations that I can do one-on-one. And I'm also going to have them as recordings. So people can listen to these 15-minute guided journeys that just bring them in and bring holistically and integrate all the different aspects that we are. And it's really a good foundation for them doing really deep work. Because I like working like deep and fast and like let's get through this stuff so that we can be truly the awesome gifts that we are, that we came in with.
I love that. Well, we'll be sure to put your contact information above this interview. So if anybody resonates with this or would like to, talk with Ashleigh further
Mhm. Yeah,
about what it could mean and what's involved, we'll be sure to do that.
yeah, please.
Well,
Yeah.
before we go today, is there any other parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with us today?
Mm, yeah. Um, well, two. I'd like to give a tip. Um, another code. And that is to write your mom a letter that she's never going to see. And you're not going to think about what you're writing. You're just going to let things flow and like name things and just let it come out of your field, out of your psyche, so that you don't have to carry it anymore. And then you can do a ritual, burn it or whatever. But it's a very freeing exercise to do. So there's that. And really, it's healing the inner mother relationship is actually easier than we think. And a gift and a jewel is to work with someone that's done it and knows a lot of the territory, because then it just happens that much faster. And you
Well,
have someone at your back.
and I think you create a safe environment, a safe place for them in case things that come up are hard to deal with, that would be
Yeah,
scary maybe to do on your own.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
this has been so beautiful, Ashley. Thank you so much for being with us today. I
Oh, you're
appreciate it
welcome.
so much.
Yeah, welcome.